Imagine the year 1066. A sun-drenched field in England is about to become the theatre of a bloody clash known as the Battle of Stamford Bridge. A battle that would echo through the annals of Viking history, forever marking a turning point in their saga of conquest. This was not a battle of mere chance, but one steeped in strategy, ambition, and the thirst for power. On one side, the determined King Harold II of England, a ruler forged in the fires of conflict and political intrigue. On the other, the formidable Viking leader Harald Hardrada, a man whose very name meant hard ruler, a testament to his unyielding nature and indomitable spirit. The Battle of Stamford Bridge was a clash of titans, a meeting of two of the greatest powers of the age. Yet it was a battle that the Vikings, so accustomed to victory, did not anticipate losing. They had arrived expecting another triumph, another land to conquer, but King Harold and his men had other plans. As the battle raged, the tide turned against the Vikings. Despite their ferocity, despite their numbers, they found themselves outmatched by the English forces. The unexpected defeat was not just a blow to their pride, but a blow to their dominance. The implications of this battle were far-reaching. It signaled a shift in power, a change in the course of history. No longer were the Vikings the unstoppable force they once were. Their era of conquest, their golden age of exploration and expansion, was coming to a close. The Battle of Stamford Bridge was a stark reminder of the cyclical nature of power. It underscored the fact that even the mightiest can fall, that even the most dominant can be dethroned. It was a testament to the ever-changing landscape of history, a testament to the fleeting nature of power. And so, the sun set on the Viking Age with the Battle of Stamford Bridge, marking the beginning of the end of Viking domination. But to truly understand the Vikings, we must journey back to their beginnings, to the first recorded Viking raid in 793 at Lindisfarne. Lindisfarne, a small island off the coast of Northumberland, England, was home to a peaceful community of monks, their tranquility shattered by the arrival of longships bearing fierce Norse warriors. This was the world's introduction to the Vikings, and it was a bloody one. The raid on Lindisfarne was a shockwave that reverberated through Europe, a terrifying harbinger of the Viking Age. Why did the Vikings raid? It's a question that's puzzled historians for centuries. One answer lies in the material allure of these monastic sites. They were treasure troves of wealth filled with precious metals and ornate religious artifacts. The Vikings, with their shipbuilding prowess and navigational skills, saw an opportunity for rich pickings. But wealth was not the only draw. In the Viking society, honor was a currency as valuable as gold. To raid was to demonstrate bravery. To return home with plunder was to earn respect. And so they journeyed across the sea, not just for the promise of wealth, but for the chance to etch their names in the annals of their people's history. But let's not forget, these were also times of scarcity and overpopulation in Scandinavia. Raiding was a practical solution, a means of survival. It allowed the Vikings to provide for their families, to expand their territories and to seek new opportunities for trade. So the raid on Lindisfarne was not just an act of violence, it was a complex interplay of economic necessity, social status and personal ambition. It was the manifestation of a society that valued courage, exploration, and the pursuit of glory. And thus, the Viking Age dawned. From the shores of Lindisfarne, the Vikings would go on to explore and conquer vast territories from the British Isles to the far reaches of Russia and the Byzantine Empire. The raid on Lindisfarne was but the opening act of a century-long saga of Viking conquests. What set the Vikings apart was not just their lust for wealth and glory, but their innovative battle tactics. Picture this: a line of Vikings standing shoulder to shoulder, each holding a large round shield. This, my friends, was the infamous shield wall, a staple of Viking warfare. The shields, overlapping like the scales of a dragon, formed an impenetrable barrier against enemy attacks. More than a defensive strategy, the shield wall allowed the Vikings to control the battlefield, pushing forward in a unified front, breaking the enemy lines with the force of an advancing storm. But the Vikings weren't just masters on land, their naval prowess was a thing of legend. Their longships, light and agile, could sail up shallow rivers, allowing them to strike deep into enemy territory. With their dragon-headed prows cutting through the waves, they could launch a raid and be back on the open sea before their enemies knew what hit them. This hit-and-run raiding strategy was as effective as it was terrifying, allowing them to strike swiftly and retreat just as quickly. Now let's talk about fear. The Vikings, you see, used fear as a weapon. Their infamous berserker warriors were said to enter a trance-like fury in battle, feeling no pain, fearing no man. The sight of these warriors, often adorned with wolf or bear skins, charging fearlessly into battle, would strike terror into the hearts of their enemies. It was psychological warfare at its finest, turning the tide of battle before the first sword was swung. But it wasn't all brute force. The Vikings were strategic, cunning. They would often send a small force to engage the enemy, drawing them out, then ambush them with a larger force. It was a deadly game of bait and switch, and the Vikings played it well. Their battle tactics, as brutal as they were ingenious, carved the Vikings a place in history. The Vikings waged many battles, but some stand out for their sheer scale and impact. First, let's travel back to the twilight of the 9th century, to the Siege of Paris in 885 to 886. This was an epic conflict, not just for its duration, but for the sheer number of Vikings involved. Reportedly, a fleet of 700 ships carrying an estimated 30 to 40,000 warriors descended upon the city. The Parisians, under the command of Count Odo, held their ground, turning the Viking siege into a protracted stalemate. The siege only ended when the French King Charles the Fat paid the Vikings to leave. This battle was a stark demonstration of the Vikings' military capabilities and their willingness to use siege tactics. Next, we turn our attention to the Battle of Maldon in 991. This clash pitted the English against a Viking fleet led by Olaf Tryggvason. The English, under the command of Bertnoth, chose to fight despite being significantly outnumbered. This decision cost them dearly as the Vikings emerged victorious, leading to a significant shift in power in the region. The Battle of Maldon is particularly noteworthy for its depiction in a famous Old English poem, which recounts the heroism and sacrifice of Bertnoth and his men. Finally, we journey to the Emerald Isle for the Battle of Clontarf in 1014. This conflict saw the Irish, under the leadership of Brian Boru, face off against a coalition of Viking and Irish rebel forces. Despite suffering heavy losses, including the death of Boru himself, the Irish emerged victorious. This battle is seen as a turning point, marking the decline of Viking power in Ireland. These battles and countless others paint a picture of a people defined by their warrior culture. The Viking Age didn't end overnight, but rather it slowly faded as the Viking culture assimilated into the cultures they had once terrorized. As the 10th century rolled in, the Viking Age began to wane. There was no single event that marked its end, but rather a series of changes that gradually led to its decline. One of the most significant factors was the adoption of Christianity by the Vikings. As they began to settle in the lands they had once raided, many Vikings converted to the local religion. This not only brought an end to their pagan practices, but also fostered a sense of community and unity among the Vikings and their new neighbours. Another major factor was the rise of centralized kingdoms in Europe. As these kingdoms grew stronger, they became less vulnerable to Viking attacks. In England, for instance, King Alfred the Great successfully defended his kingdom against Viking invasions and later established a series of fortresses to protect his lands. This pattern was repeated in other parts of Europe as well, with local rulers consolidating their power and establishing strong defences against external threats. At the same time, internal conflicts also played a role in the end of the Viking Age. As the Viking society became more settled, power struggles and disputes over land and resources became more common. These conflicts weakened the Vikings, making them less of a threat to their neighbours. In the end, the Viking Age faded not with a bang, but with a whimper. The Vikings gradually assimilated into the cultures they had once terrorized, leaving behind only traces of their once formidable presence. Yet, despite their decline, the Vikings left a lasting impact on the world. Their innovative battle tactics, their bold exploration of unknown lands, and their rich mythology have all become part of our shared cultural heritage. The Viking Age may have ended, but the legacy of these fierce warriors lives on in the history and culture of Europe.